Now to our GMA cover story. It's from the family of Soundgarden singer Chris Cornell. They're suing his doctor for malpractice, saying that overprescribed drugs caused his death. Amy's back with that story.
That's right. Good morning, guys. The lawsuit filed by Cornell's widow, Vicky, and their children alleges that prescription drugs caused erratic behavior in the singer before his death last year. He was the frontman for Soundgarden. And a two-time Grammy-winning rock star. In 2015, jamming out on our GMA stage. But just last year, Chris Cornell's life was cut short in what was declared a suicide following what his family describes as years of struggle with drug and alcohol addiction. In a new lawsuit, his wife, Vicky Cornell, is suing the rock icon's doctor and his office, who she says was negligent, over-prescribing the recovering addict with mind-altering controlled substances, which she alleges clouded his judgment and caused him to engage in dangerous, impulsive behaviors that he was unable to control, costing him his life. According to the lawsuit, Cornell was reportedly prescribed more than 940 doses of the anti-anxiety drug lorazepam by Dr. Robert Koblin or his authorized employees in the 20 months leading up to his death. Earlier this year, Vicky told Robin it's a medication that should not be given to a recovering addict.
I didn't know anything about the medication at the time. I've learned it's not supposed to be given to anybody who's in recovery. And if you have to give it, they have to be closely monitored, and it should not be given for more than 2 to 3 weeks. So he relapsed. In a 7-day period, he took 20-something pills, and in a 9-day period, 33.
The suit also claims that during that 20-month period, his doctor did not even physically see or speak to Mr. Cornell, alleging all of the prescriptions were made by or through non-physician staff unsupervised by him. It also alleges the doctor failed to warn Cornell about the risk of suicidal ideation or any of the other known serious side effects. Vicky saying she saw some of those effects the night of Chris's final show.
He was off pitch. He forgot words. He walked off stage. Chris Cornell doesn't do those kinds of things. He's not that kind of a rock star.
Hours later, Cornell passed away. The medical report finding 7 different drugs in his system, but saying drugs were not a contributing factor. Vicky disagreed.
He lived his life. He would never have ever left this world.
And you believe it was the addiction that led him to do what he did that night in taking his life?
I don't think that he could make any decisions because of the level of impairment.
The attorney for Dr. Koblin telling us overnight the medications he prescribed for Mr. Cornell were appropriate in both frequency and dosage, and that his treatment was within the standard of care and not a substantial factor in causing Mr. Cornell to commit suicide. Now, the suit also claims Dr. Koblin prescribed Cornell oxycodone during that same 20-month period leading up to his death. In addition to negligence, he's being sued for failure to obtain informed consent and willful misconduct. George?
Okay, Amy, thanks very much. Let's bring in our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Jen Ashton, here right now. So they're basically saying the doctor should have known a lot better in filing this suit. But what can patients do to protect themselves?
Right, and I want to be clear, George. I want to give general kind of news that you can use for both patients and healthcare providers here, because obviously I'm not an attorney. But I think the key for patients is that when you are seeing a physician or a healthcare provider and you're given a prescription for anything, it's either a short-term problem or a long-term problem, and there has to be an endpoint there. And you need to make that provider aware if you're on other medications. Now, of course, some people don't want to do that, and it's really, I believe, the onus of responsibility on the provider to ask for that information. But this is very important because a lot of people will see one doctor for one thing, another doctor for another thing, and then you get into a potential situation where you can have polypharmacy and drug-drug interactions.
And also expect the doctor to be putting on the brakes.
100%. And I'll tell you what I do in my office, George, and patients and people watching can do this at home. You can go to drugs.com, put in any medication that you're taking, and check for potential interactions. Now, I will caution people, moderate interactions, very common. What you want to look for are major interactions. And if they come up, you want to discuss that with the pharmacist or the healthcare provider. But the key is responsibility on both sides. largely on the healthcare
And
provider.
dealing with patients who are struggling with addiction is such a challenge.
Listen, that is huge. And if you're dealing with someone who on top of that has psychiatric issues, chronic pain, acute pain, it becomes challenging. But we have to treat the whole person, not just one issue, not just one disease, and not one body part. And follow-up is critical, whether you're talking about benzos like lorazepam, whether you're talking about opiates, whatever medication you're talking about. It's not, here's your prescription, see you in 20 months or a year.
Well, that was one of the most stunning facts, that he hadn't seen the doctor
There
in many
has
months.
to be follow-up. This is critical, and it's not just good medical care. It is the hallmark of medical care.
Jen Ashton, thanks very much.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.